We begin understanding and applying the concept of as above, so below in the new astrology, the science of relations. This fourth relation, soul and personality, the causal body, and the integrated unity of mental, astral, and etheric physical bodies.
Relation by investigating integrated personality. Master DK puts forth that personality integration, that unifying of the physical, astral, and mental bodies, takes place as the entity moves forward on the path of evolution. For disciples and initiates, this evolution leading to soul contact and fusion of soul and personality is stimulated and accelerated through meditation, through service, and right speech, which we could extend to being right application of divine ideals that appear in consciousness as right ideas for the person, the family, the community, the group, and the nation. In order to establish some impersonality, we will use a nation rather than an individual, and to the extent we are able to view the nation from the altitude of the observer, using Master DK's teachings, as we consider the questions.
Has this nation control of its physical etheric body? Has this nation demonstrated control of the astral emotional body? Are there any apparent major glamours impacting this nation as a whole, proving to be a barrier to advancing soul consciousness? Has this nation adequately developed the lower concrete mind, the higher mind? What service does this nation contribute to the world, to humanity as a whole? How would we define meditation for a nation? A being encompassing the brain cells of the planetary logos, Shambhala? What percentage of this nation is spiritually oriented, seeking a higher purpose? What percentage of the brain cells, the population, demonstrate impersonal love, serving the higher purpose of the nation as a whole, can function as the observer? Is there evidence of their presence and influence in the life of the nation? To what degree? What is the nation you have chosen? What is the quality of the etheric physical body of that nation? What contributes to this quality that can be seen, known, sensed, using the attitude of the observer? What does Master DK tell us about using the astrology of a nation in our analysis?
So what do we need to remember or to learn and integrate in relation to the mind, brain, the mental body that we covered last month, integrating as a personality? DK gives us a warning. He tells us that all development proceeds not in ordered sections. It proceeds as proceeds the greater system, with constant overlapping and with parallelism, due to the inherent ray of the spirit or monad, to cyclic changes and most important for us as we study the science of relations, to the diversity of forces playing astrologically and oft from unknown cosmic centers upon the palpitating life within the atoms. A warning to keep in mind as we move forward together today. And when we meet in group formation, as we try to penetrate into the integration of the personality of a group or a nation.
The relations to be established cannot be based upon some definite starting point, as is sometimes possible in casting the individual horoscope, but upon energy effects coming direct from the sign themselves or via certain planetary rulers, again either exoteric, esoteric, or hierarchical. These effects are again conditioned by the interplay between the energy of the rays which govern the soul or the personality of the nation or country under consideration. The problem is likewise complicated because there will be the need to distinguish between the horoscope of the territory housing the nation and the people themselves who compose that unit, which we call a nation.
Master DK tells us that some nations are fluid and not properly integrated, as are the masses of people everywhere. Others are integrated entities or fully expressing personalities. And he tells us in The Destiny of Nations that France is an integrated personality. Others are crystallized and have nearly run their course as personalities. Others again are coming under the influence of their soul ray, leading to another cycle of fluidity before the definiteness of the initiate entity becomes apparent. A few again are purely embryonic, and thus the extreme difficulty of the science becomes increasingly apparent. What can be determined in relation to the point for the nation under consideration? As DK always does, he does give us encouragement.
There is, however, no need for discouragement, for this is a science, subject to moments of intense illumination when the intuition will suddenly reveal determining laws, and when the capacity to think abstractly and synthetically will pour floods of light upon the most difficult and complex of problems. When the world again settles down to a cycle of peace and with opportunity for further conscious unfoldment, it will be found that that embryonic factor, which we call the intuition, will flower forth into as recognizable an expression of human consciousness as the present intellectual grasp and mental perception of the race.
So another thing we should not forget is the current points of spiritual influx. And you can look at the location of the nation in relation to these points. The point around New York, second ray and third ray, around London, soul ray, the fifth ray, seventh ray, the personality ray, the impact of Geneva, first ray soul, second ray personality, Darjeeling, second ray soul, fifth ray personality, and Tokyo, sixth ray soul, fourth ray personality. Our group suggested some nations to look at in greater depth. The examples that will be used today relate to Switzerland, showing a deep relation to Geneva, first ray soul, second ray personality, and in close proximity to France and Germany, two countries named that we should look at in greater depth. We always have to remember that the planetary being, our Earth, is a non-sacred planet, so all the rays flowing into and through are not pure. They are in some way lacking. And with its personality of the Earth governed by the third ray, the ray of active intelligence, and the soul coming in governed by the second ray, the dominant ray of the solar system. We also factor in that humanity is the throat center of the planetary logos, governed by the third ray, and that humanity, in relation to the brain cells of the planetary logos in the head center of Shambhala, comes forth as a kingdom ruled by the fourth ray. Humanity, living as nations, is in the process of developing mind to express soul consciousness, and therefore is influenced by the fifth ray, the ray of the fifth root race and fifth sub-race, the ray of science and concrete knowledge. So we keep in mind this interconnectedness of the rays from the highest to the lowest.
The coming into activity of the throat closely connected with the first ray, the first faint orientation of spiritual man towards Shambhala can take place, becoming more and more intensified and pronounced at the time of the third initiation. I would like here to point out the numerical correspondences. 1. The third great world center, humanity. 2. The activity of the third ray, active intellect. 3. The third initiation, which marks the consummation of the first, just as the fourth initiation marks the consummation of the second, and the fifth of the third. 4. The third major center, the throat center.
5. The third race, the Aryan, as it expresses the first strictly human race, the Lemurian, the fifth root race and fifth subrace. 6. The third plane, the physical, the reflection of the third highest plane, the Atmic. 7. The third periodical vehicle, the personality, considering personality integration. 8. The third divine aspect, intelligence. 9. The third grade of the divine messenger, Hercules, uplifting the symbolism of the labors to align with the new astrology and the coming one. 10. The sustaining life, the third or outer sun, the physical sun. These are a few of the correspondences which it is helpful for us to bear in mind, insofar as they reveal divine quality, spiritual intent, and universal objectives.
In the words of Albert Einstein, We are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. What is the sound? The music of the nation you are considering. Does the nation sound a beat? Does the nation follow a rhythm? What is its pace? Are there a range of octaves in the nation? Is there a dissonance? Is the nation in tune, in sync, sounding as one? Is this nation able to keep time to the rhythm of the planetary logo?
In considering the nation of Switzerland, I went back and looked at examples that could be found of the evolution of the sound that comes through the composers of that nation over time. As you're exploring the nation of your choice, consider how sound calling forth from that nation has evolved and changed. We won't take time to listen to these today, but let us instead listen to the national anthem of Switzerland, which was written as a prayer, as a psalm in 1840. And then the tune was changed because it originally had the same melody as the British anthem. And now it is said to fully and unmistakably express Swiss creation. So let's just listen to it. It's a brief musical interlude. in considering this particular national anthem, can we see or hear the emotional idealism that is coming forth through this anthem? What does it suggest to us regarding the spiritual orientation on the astral plane of this nation? Now let's look very briefly at some of the analysis of Switzerland and pause after each slide for you to jot down some notes about the nation that you're thinking of. So in relation to Switzerland, what might be the etheric physical ray?
Let's consider Switzerland and what might be the etheric physical ray. Start with the third ray, some characteristics of the third ray, etheric physical body and brain. Force is adaptation, energy is development, action is evolution. The third ray is the personality ray of the planetary logos. Physical strength and stamina and adaptability. Conversely, 3 major languages are spoken in Switzerland: French, German, and Italian, and a fourth that is the oldest, quickly being replaced by English. First ray etheric physical with strength, stability, and control. The etheric body, the body of vitality, is the organ whereby personality or soul expression becomes evidenced upon the physical plane. Its potency is that which evokes the physical form. Most of the vehicles have a dual capacity, invocation and evocation. They also have a third function, the ground or focus energy, thus producing a point of tension, of crisis, and an interlude prior to a process of transmission. Ponder on these words.
So in relation to a nation, as DK tells us, we can look at the territory. And if you look at the territory of Switzerland, you might be inclined to think of a certain ray. And let us think of Switzerland's physical etheric in relation to the population of the country. And this population, we'll see, has quite a different composition than we might find in our own country, the country that you're thinking about.
The etheric physical body of Switzerland. Strength. Boundaries are strong. It is a landlocked nation. The nation has mountainous regions, is connected via lakes and rivers. The nation has limited but plentiful regions as food sources. The population is healthy and well-educated, active in governance. The nation is relatively self-sufficient based on the resources available to sustain vegetable, animal, and human life. The nation is centrally located in Europe in its current configuration, which politically excludes Russia and some Eastern European countries, in relation to trade and influence, especially given the role of Geneva as a centralizing agency for European unity. Switzerland is increasingly becoming dependent on other nations, therefore increasing interdependence as part of Europe. Third ray and first ray would seem plausible as rays for the etheric physical body. Yet, as we look more closely at the virtues of each ray, what case can be made for the choice?
Generally, the physical etheric is first ray, third ray, or seventh ray. So if you look at the virtues, there are many that could reflect the humanity, the the population of Switzerland. So maybe it would be of real value to look at the virtues that need to be developed related to the physical etheric body of humanity, the population of Switzerland. The first ray, there seems to be a level of great tolerance within the nation. Certainly patience is demonstrated. There is a degree of astral tenderness, sympathy, possibly humility. What about the third ray? Devotion, yes, that seems to be present. Accuracy, that does seem to be present in their business and manufacturing demonstration of the physical etheric plane. Energetic, using common sense, sympathy, and tolerance again. And the seventh ray, humility. Is there a need to develop more humility? Gentleness and love. But possibly it is the realization of unity beyond the borders that may need to be developed, and a greater sense of wide-mindedness. So consider that in relation to the nation that you're considering, and then also possibly use this chart in looking at the astral body. The rays are usually the second, fourth, and sixth rays, although the first ray, if it's a highly developed nation, can be coming into play. And also use this to think about the mental body, what virtues need to be developed in the nation. I just encourage you to utilize the points of analysis that Master DK gives us and to focus on the virtues, because virtues tend, in thinking about the development of virtues, to align with what has been proven in terms of humanity, that even as children, it's a great study that shows that encouragement leads to better performance, leads to better development, rather than just noticing all the good. Look for what needs to be developed in an encouraging way.
Qualities of this nation. In relation to the guides of this nation, currently in incarnation, are they part of a policy-making function of the government? Are those individuals and groups polarized in the mental body? Are they freeing themselves of glamour? Are they making the right application of ideals to open the love petals of the egoic lotus?
And keep in mind that the personality rays change from period to period in connection with countries and cities, just as with individual human beings. How these events in modern history potentially influenced or changed the personality ray of the nation in its evolutionary process. Consider that for the nation under consideration. Master DK does give us the astrology of some of the nations. In the case of Switzerland, an Aries rising sign and an Aquarius sun, which are hints related to the rays. What comes forth in looking at Switzerland is there's a high level of inclusion that's apparent, that stems over a long period of time as this nation has developed. And we could look at the planetary rulers, and if you are into astrology, currently we know that there's an alignment of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. We could look at influences that may be beginning to come into play in relation to Switzerland. And you can look at the tabulation in esoteric astrology for the series of interrelated triangles that are given there in relation to the nation under consideration.
The horoscope of a country can be either that of the soul of the nation or of the personality of the nation, based on the form aspect. There are no means as yet of determining the date, for instance, of the birth of a nation or of a race. Boundaries are not determining factors, nor is history itself as now given an adequate guide. There are 5 points of spiritual influx. 1. London, for the British Empire. 2. New York, for the Western Hemisphere. 3. Geneva, for Europe, including the USSR. 4. Tokyo, for the Far East. 5. Darjeeling, for India and the greater part of Asia. Through these 5 places and the areas in their neighborhood, the energy of the 5 rays pours forth, conditioning the world of man, leading to results of profound significance and determining the trend of events. These 5 points of conditioning energy, in spite of the fact that the energy pouring through Darjeeling has not yet reached its full strength, produce 2 triangles of force in their interrelations. 1. London, New York, Darjeeling. 2. Tokyo, New York, Geneva.
So in relation to Switzerland, we would look to the second triangle, Tokyo, New York, and Geneva, as the most important triangle of force in relation to this nation at this time.
Might we assess the progress of Switzerland with its Aquarius sun, beginning to work with its Aries soul? The sign Aquarius is a dual sign and signifies 2 vibrations. In Aquarius, substance and anima mundi, or imprisoned soul, begin to work in mutual tolerance. And in the higher individual, soul and spirit are expressing themselves through substance.
This may be a clue as to the personality ray of Switzerland. How might we assess the progress of the nation under consideration, with its sun beginning to work with its rising sign, the soul? A conscious orientation towards the soul and towards the hierarchy. A deep love for humanity, present and based on mental perception and intuitive understanding, and not on emotional reaction.
In your investigation, you might look, as we did with Switzerland, to the population, and that has changed. There's now a predominantly German population in Switzerland, which might suggest a potency in the incoming fourth ray of Germany that will show forth as the fourth ray begins to come into prominence after 2025. So the question you might ask in relation to a nation, what is the population and distribution of that population? And does that size and distribution have any impact on this nation in terms of the development of soul focus? A few statistics. Switzerland is quite a small population, 101st in terms of countries by population, and 75% almost of the population is urban rather than rural. And the median age, 42 years. Think about those factors in relation to your nation. And then look at the historic and current cultural, religious, and creative trends. There are some listed for Switzerland. The most important is probably that's the home of international and European cooperation. An interesting fact that Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a Genevan philosopher, writer, and composer, and his political philosophy influenced the progress of the Age of Enlightenment throughout Europe. Does this point to a great importance in terms of Switzerland in the future? So consider the brain of the nation under consideration as part of the brain of the planetary logos, Shambhala. As aspirants and disciples often, but not always, there's a first ray line. Many are also on the second ray line or third ray line, depending upon the nation. So the aspirants and disciples within this nation, representing those brain cells that are beginning to fall into the larger divine rhythm. They are learning the nature of responsiveness. So can we identify those brain cells, the aspirants, the disciples in the nation, and engage them in the analysis of the nation and how to move forward soul control? You can look at the foreign policy of a nation. In the case of Switzerland, their priorities are listed as peace and security, prosperity, sustainability, and digitalization. And these may be biased statements, clearly, indicating the direction of this country at this personality level and the quality of that direction in relation to other nations and the world as a whole. You can look at the monetary systems and the distribution of wealth within a country. Switzerland came under criticism for its secrecy laws that encouraged organized crime syndicates to establish accounts in Swiss banks. So as money is concretized energy and is one of the three tests of the physical etheric body, how is this nation demonstrating having addressed this test of the use of money as concretized energy for hierarchical purposes? You can look at the educational system of a country. There are a couple important items in relation to Switzerland. It's one of the top 10 ranked in the world. It has a highly established functional system of delegated accountability and vast support from administration. The basis of educational development in this country is huge. Most of the universities ranked in the global top 100 are in Switzerland, and many are. And the education system is one of the most developed and complex in the world. You can look at the employment rate and how ordinary people are faring in a country and what their processes are in terms of making decisions. It's interesting that in Switzerland, the unions have generally denounced the use of strikes as economic and political weapons, and disputes are usually settled by arbitration.
source of impact related to this nation's resources: natural, educational, business, communication, technology, financial, military alliances, arts and culture. Other categories: national reputation for stability and reliability,
Switzerland, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, managed to secure its spot in the top 10 ranking for the best education systems of the globe. With a well-established and highly functional system of delegated accountability and vast support from administration, the basis for educational development in this country are huge. In relation to Switzerland, we would suggest the highlighted factors.
Think of the nation you have under consideration. Which factors come to mind as most vital in considering the potential of this nation to become an integrated personality and open to the inflow of soul? In Switzerland, there's a quality of inclusiveness within its structures. So how might you look at how active the citizenry is in selecting leadership, agreeing with the direction of the national leadership, engaging in solutions to solve national problems and challenges? How would you answer this question for the nation you have under consideration? This level of inclusiveness has evolved in terms of Switzerland, and it was actually one of the last constitutional rights given to women. It was only in 1971 that the Constitution was amended by national referendum to grant women the right to vote in federal elections and to hold federal office. And then only in 1991 was the voting age reduced from 20 to 18 years of age. How would you assess the nation you have under consideration in relation to inclusiveness in its structures? Though founded on or patterned after the Constitution of the United States, Switzerland is a societal democracy, socializational democracy. It amends its constitution and integrates those changes into its constitution to attempt to balance politically and become more stable given the country's linguistic and religious diversity. You can find hints as to the relation of a solar plexus center, clearinghouse for the lower energies, transmuting the lower to higher, unifying the throat center and the sacral center, the higher and the lower in this nation, in terms of its communications approach. They have the priority of digitalization, and yet they are stressed and stress the important role of the National Radio and Television Corporation in maintaining and nurturing a common understanding among all Swiss.
Could we come up with a hypothetical ray chart for this nation? What would be the etheric physical ray first ray, third ray, seventh ray. What would be the emotional ray? First ray, second ray, fourth ray, sixth ray. What would be the mental ray? First ray, third ray, fourth ray, fifth ray. And these would be apparent in a not fully integrated personality, or in the fully integrated personality of this nation. What would that personality ray possibly be? With Geneva located there, one would hypothesize as a soul ray.
What would you hypothesize? And when we're in these processes, we always need to keep in mind that we live and move and have our being within the ray of our nation. And how do we move to the altitude of the observer, that very high level of the higher mind in making these assessments? So, which essential relation would be the focus for this nation at this point in their planetary national evolution? Keeping in mind, as DK says, that humanity is in reality the brain of the planetary deity, its many units being analogous to the brain cells in the human apparatus. Where is the country under consideration? The first relation, the physical body, being controlled by the personality. The second relation, the astral body, controlled by the personality and the higher mind. The third relation, are brain and mind unified? Are all those units in the brain of this country, that humanity, uniting with higher mind beginning to influence more and more, and the causal body opening? Or is it the fourth relation, the relation of soul personality, which is in play? So with Switzerland, we really have to look at Geneva as a major influence. The members of the hierarchy represent those who have achieved peace and quiescence and can be impressed. Aspirants and disciples represent those brain cells which are beginning to fall into the larger divine rhythm. They are learning the nature of responsiveness. The mass of men are like the millions of unused brain cells, which the psychologists and scientists tell us we possess but do not employ. So in relation to Switzerland, as the influence of Geneva, that spiritual influx point made a difference in terms of aspirants and disciples being present and being influential in this nation. And how would we look for this? As ordered purpose, the influx coming from the Buddhic plane, the intuitional plane, playing into and through Geneva concerning the throat center, and evoking light upon the path. So again, how can we, in our small sphere, how can this nation in its small sphere be of service to the world? By thinking this teaching into the minds of the public, by expressing before the public the teaching it imparts, and by a life lived in conformity with its teaching. The service is very real. How might we see this in this little country of Switzerland, or in the nation you are considering? is there a critical mass of aspirants and disciples influencing, making it possible for this nation to move forward? Speculatively, does Geneva, well, we know Geneva has a first ray soul and second ray personality. Would Switzerland have a second ray soul? Would Switzerland have a third ray mind? Would Switzerland have a second ray astral body given the level of inclusiveness? Would its personality ray possibly be the seventh ray, moving to the third ray, progressing along the path? Pure speculation, not answers, just questions. Is the Ajna Center opening in the country, in the nation of Switzerland?
Gather all the factors and insights you have accumulated together related to the qualities of the etheric, physical, emotional or astral expression of this nation, mental, concrete ideas, contributions and expressions from the nation to other nations, higher mental, indications of soul awareness, expanding soul consciousness.
How would you express as this nation in response to these questions? What is this nation contributing to the evolution of humanity? How is this nation responding to global crises? What stage of development does this nation demonstrate? Path of probation. The aspirant stepping onto the path. Path of discipleship. The disciple. Probationary, accepted. Path of initiation. First, second, third. First major initiation. Dare we speculate? Given the status or place upon the path, what focus should our meditation be for this nation?
DK tells us service can be defined as the spontaneous effect of soul contact. This contact is so definite and fixed that the life of the soul can pour through into the instrument which the soul must perforce use upon the physical plane. So is this nation proving to be in active service of humanity and the plan as an instrument on the physical plane? In terms of this essential relation, this fourth relation of soul personality, this question can give us an indication of if the personality of this nation is integrated.
Service is a soul instinct, therefore innate and peculiar to soul unfoldment. Service is the outstanding characteristic of the soul, just as desire is the outstanding characteristic of the lower nature. Service is group desire, just as in the lower nature it is personality desire. Service is the urge to group good. Service cannot, therefore, be taught or imposed upon a person as a desirable evidence of aspiration, functioning from without and based upon a theory of service. Each life tends to greater stability, but seldom is the threefold personality yet to be found lined up, if so I may put it, with the causal consciousness. Temporary moments occur when this is the case, and when in moments of highest aspiration and for purposes of unselfish endeavor, the higher and the lower form a line direct. Usually the emotional body, through violent emotion and vibration or a fluctuating restlessness, is continuously out of alignment, thus the necessity of our service to dissipate glamour. Where the emotional body may be momentarily aligned, then the mental body acts as an obstruction through illusion, preventing the percolation down from the higher to the lower, and so to the physical brain. It takes many lives of strenuous endeavor before the emotional body can be stilled and a mental body built that will act as a filter and not as an impediment. Even when this has been somewhat accomplished and the emotional body is stabilized and a pure reflector, and the mental body serves the purpose of a sensitive plate and discriminator, and the intelligence explainer of the higher imparted truth, even then, I say, it takes much discipline and many lives of effort to align the two at the same time. When that is done, the control of the physical brain and its final alignment remain to be effected, so that it may act as a direct receiver and transmitter of the imparted teaching and may reflect with accuracy the higher consciousness.
Think of the nation. Master DK tells us that the majority of humanity are still polarized on the astral plane. With that in mind, it's easy to see that many nations are still at that point where the emotional body is in control, and the mental body is acting as an obstruction through illusion, preventing the percolation down from the higher to the lower, and so to the physical brain. But let's move forward. And as we looked at in our work in Essential 3, Mind Brain, we looked at these sheaths and the extent to which the sheaths become unified, interrelated, and result in a life for a nation in which the circuitry is established, the neural patterns are established, so that the nation can work in harmony. And that activates movement, the high astral expression of emotional idealism, a clear and pure astral field, all expressing the life, quality, and appearance of this nation using the higher mind. So that's responsive to higher ideals and ideas, the higher evolutions and spiritual vibration, light, and illumination. So in relation to Switzerland, shifting their focus from lower to higher with an Aries rising sign, could we say there's an achieved equilibrium at the point of rest that provides the mental impetus for soul control? Passion is transmuted into love, and the initial desire of Aries becomes the full expression of love wisdom. Desire to manifest becomes the aspiration to be. Is this possible for the nation of Switzerland? Is the Antakarana beginning to develop in that nation? Is the vehicle of the higher self visible on the third subplane, the plane of spiritual discernment? We've looked at this before, but what it gives us is DK's teachings regarding this aligning of the three vehicles, that it is stabilized within the causal periphery by an effort of the will. What is the will of this nation? If its lower bodies are truly aligned, is the mental body holding those two lower bodies in circumspect alignment? Is the mental body then in direct communication, unobstructed and free from interference, straight through to the physical brain, to the humanity within this nation? Let's listen to DK's instructions and teachings regarding a yet higher alignment.
When the alignment is fourfold, and when the three above-mentioned bodies are aligned with the body of the higher self, the causal or egoic body, and held steady within its circumference, then the great leaders of the race, those who emotionally and intellectually sway mankind, can be seen working. Then the inspirational writers and dreamers can bring down their inspirations and dreams. And then the synthetic and abstract thinkers can transfer their conceptions to the world of form. It is right through a question of an unimpeded channel. Study therefore in this connection, and when time permits, physical coordination. Then to physical coordination add emotional stability, and you have the two vehicles functioning as one. When the coordination extends to the mental body, the threefold lower man is reaching his apotheosis and has rung most of the changes in the world of form.
The four lesser brain centers: solar plexus in the head center, splenic center in the head center, sacral center in the head center, base center in the head center, are functioning at high vibration in the man of a highly coordinated personality. For the average man, this alignment occurs only at intervals, in moments of stress, in hours of needed humanitarian effort, and in times of intensest aspiration. Abstraction of a more or less degree has to enter in before the ego takes continued notice of the personality or lower self. When the abstraction involves the emotions, is based in the mentality, and contacts the physical brain, then alignment is commencing.
Can we take this information from DK, and in this, our study of the science of relations and the new astrology, which is also the science of the centers and the science of triangles, incorporate this teaching into our understanding of nations? Thought that might come to mind in relation to what we may have previously considered a high development, highly coordinated personality among the leaders of the Allies in World War II may have indeed been those nations as average nations. where in this moment of great stress and demand, the humanitarian effort and intensest aspiration came forward. The abstraction was entered into before the ego was able to take notice of the personality or lower self. And this all evolved because that was in relation to emotions and ideals, emotional idealism, and based on the reality that was faced at that time that came into the physical brains that allowed that alignment to commence and to be successful. But this was with a tremendous influence from hierarchy. So I think it's good to pause before one makes a suggestion that a nation is particularly advanced and think about these 4 lesser brain centers in the nation, those aspirants, disciples, and initiates who are allowing that nation to function at this very highly coordinated personality level and allow for soul influence to come to play. We looked at this in the brain-mind essential relation, and we're going to just move forward quickly, noting that the lower concrete mind is related to the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus and capable of pronounced soul illumination, proving eventually to be the searchlight of the soul. So you may look for this factor in the nation. And then also we will consider this nation in relation to the 4th kingdom and the work to be done in our 5th civilization, our Aryan race, the principle of mind, bringing a shift to a higher level of consciousness. And this is essentially the goal of this 5th civilization, is to lift the 4th kingdom to the 5th by the end of this particular root race, seeing that emerge in the 6th as intuitive, the intuitive principle. This is another thing to look at, and as DK says, this point warrants thought in relation to a nation. So in relation to Geneva, let's listen to the impact of Geneva on Switzerland from DK's perspective.
The force which the center at Geneva is expressing, at present ineffectually, though later a change will come, is that of the 2nd ray of love, wisdom, with its major emphasis at this time upon the quality of inclusiveness. It is concerned with the binding together in brotherly love and with the expression of the nature of service. This planetary center, which conditions the little country of Switzerland, has had a most potent effect upon that country, and a study of these effects will demonstrate future possibility for the world once the flow of its energy is less obstructed. It has produced the fusion of 3 powerful racial types in group formation and not through admixture as in the United States. It has enabled 2 relatively antagonistic divisions of the Christian faith to work together with a minimum of friction. It has made Geneva the seat of the Red Cross, that world activity which works truly impartially with and for the nationals of all countries, and for the prisoners of all nations. It housed that sad but well-intentioned experiment which was called the League of Nations, and will again, now does, house a more true league to meet the world need. It is that which protected the small country from the aggressive sweep of the Axis powers. The motto or note of this center is, I seek to fuse, to blend, and serve.
So ideas are streaming from hierarchy into the higher mental plane through the receptivity of the causal body of Switzerland. And we consider this nation in relation to one of these three major points of spiritual influx. At this time, Geneva, the love type, full of love and fusing power. And the receptivity of the causal body is established through the building that has occurred of the Antakarana and the unfolding of the petals of the egoic lotus. And the result is flashes or brief awareness of the higher ideals, vision, and healing from the Buddhic plane.
The stage of mental recording. The clarity and the accuracy of this recording will be dependent upon the condition of the channel of reception, the Antakarana. In this recording, curiously enough, a certain element of time enters in. It is not time as you know it upon the physical plane, which is but the registration by the brain of passing events. It is the higher mental correspondence to time. Into this, I cannot here enter as the theme is too abstruse. For time, in this connection, is related to distance, to descent, to focus, and to the power to record.
So it's really essential that in relation to a nation, we look at the ability of the nation to achieve this mental recording.
Two, the stage of brain reception. The accuracy of this reception is dependent on the quality of the physical brain cells, upon the polarization of the thinking man in the head center, and the freedom of the brain cells from all emotional impression. The difficulty lies here, that the receiving aspirant or the focused thinker is always aware emotionally of the descent of the higher impression and of the consequent clarification of the theme of his thought. This must, however, be recorded by a perfectly quiescent astral vehicle, and therefore you will see one of the main objectives of true meditation.
So for a nation, how is this nation receiving in its brain cells within the nation, the physical brain cells, polarized in the head center, free from that emotional dissonance? Is the nation able to record in a perfectly quiescent astral vehicle.
Three, the stage of recognized interpretation. This is an exceedingly difficult phase. Interpretation is dependent upon many factors: the educational background, the point reached in evolution, the mystical or the occult approach of the disciple to the center of truth, his freedom from the lower psychism, his essential humility, which plays a major part in proper understanding, and his personality decentralization. In fact, the character in its entirety is involved in this important matter of correct interpretation.
So in relation to nations, we think back in terms of what we may have identified as the physical etheric ray. And in looking at the virtues needing to be developed, humility was a primary virtue needed for first and seventh ray, particularly. So just factor this into your thinking. Is the brain leadership of all of the major components of national success and development free from lower psychism? Is personality decentralization evident for this nation?
I would here remind you that few idealists are personally in touch with the idea which has given birth to the idealism. They are only in touch with the human interpretation of the idea as formulated by some disciple or intuitive. A very different thing.
The problem of ideas. In the final analysis, the main problem of world government is the wise use of ideas. It is here that the power of speech makes itself felt. Just as in the department of religion or of education, the power of the written word, of the page, is felt. In the field of politics, the masses are swayed by their orators, and never more so than now through the use of the radio. We might add television, the internet, social media today. Great ideas are dinned into the ear of the public without cessation. Theories as to dictatorship, communism, Nazism, fascism, Marxism, nationalism, and democratic ideals. Methods of rule by this or that group of thinkers are presented to the public, leaving them no time for consideration or for clear thinking. Racial antipathies are spread, and personal preferences and illusions find expression, bringing about the deception of the unthinking. The man who has a golden tongue, the man who has the gift of playing with words, can voice with emphasis people's grievances. The juggler in statistics, the fanatic with a certain and sure cure for social ills, and the man who loves to fan race hatreds can ever get a following. Such men can with facility upset the balance of the community and lead a body of unthinking adherents to a transient success and power, or to obloquy and oblivion. Destiny of Nations, page 180. To what extent is this problem a factor in the mind of the nation under consideration?
Through the passage of time, the race has been brought to the point where man is beginning to raise the lower energies into the higher centers, and it is this transition which is causing much of the trouble in the world today. Many men everywhere are becoming politically, religiously, scientifically, or artistically creative, and the impact of their mental energy and of their plans and ideas is making itself felt competitively. Until the idea of brotherhood dominates the race, we shall see these powers prostituted to personal ends and ambitions, and to consequent disaster, just as we have seen the power of sex prostituted to personal satisfaction and selfishness and consequent disaster. Some few, however, are raising their energies higher still and translating them into terms of the heavenly world. The goal for all nations: individuality within the one great whole. The Son of Mind. This is the soul itself, governed by the second aspect of all the seven rays, a point I would ask you seriously to register. It reflects the lower phase of the love aspect of divinity, and summarizes in itself the results of all accumulated knowledge, which is wisdom, illuminated by the light of the intuition. Another way of expressing this is to describe it as love, availing itself of experience and knowledge. It expresses itself most fully through the love petals of its innate being. Through dedicated and devoted service, it brings the divine plan into activity in the three worlds of human accomplishment. It is therefore related to the second aspect of the spiritual triad, and is brought into functioning activity through meditation. It then controls and utilizes for its own spiritual ends the consecrated personality via the illumined mind referred to above. It is eternal in time and space. Will to unification, Jupiter, Ray 2. Will to unify, will to synthesize, will to produce coherence and mutual attraction, will to establish relationships.
And therefore the focus on the will to good, which brings goodwill and results in right human relations.
When the world again settles down to a cycle of peace and with opportunity for further conscious unfoldment, it will be found that that embryonic factor, which we call the intuition, will flower forth into as recognizable an expression of human consciousness as the present intellectual grasp and mental perception of the race. Until this time comes, the searching astrologer must proceed hopefully, but cannot yet expect full understanding of what I here impart. the major impulse driving the Christ towards special work was the desire to establish right human relations. It is also the desire, realized or unrealized, of humanity. And we know that someday the desire of all nations will come, that right human relations will be found everywhere, and that goodwill will implement that fulfillment, leading to peace in all lands and among all peoples.
We'll review this again. We'll review this when we go into our session in June regarding soul contact. But just to note that this abstract mind is energized by love. The abstract mind burns out all personality qualities, leaving only a purified instrument, colored by the soul ray, and no longer necessitating the existence of a soul body. And this occurs at the fourth initiation, which is far ahead of us all. We'll also continue to use this as a kind of template as we look at the fourth relation and the way in which this progresses. And we'll look at the centers and the factor of group will. So having gathered together many perspectives on the three bodies of the nation, and considering these within the context of the teachings of Master D.K. in relation to the point this nation may be experiencing along the path of evolution, we attempt to discover what might be the most important aspect on which to meditate on behalf of this nation. So consider what you might propose in relation to the nation of Switzerland. Becoming an integrated personality and a full realization of the spiritual impulse coming through Geneva. So let us close this part of our endeavor to work in better understanding together and move our service to a higher level in relation to the fourth relation, the integrated personality being the first step. And this is closing for us in this point toward the end of Taurus and looking forward to the Festival of Goodwill when the Christ is said to sound the last sermon of the Buddha. And in the 3 days of preparation, the first, the keynote of love, the Christ sounds for us to dwell in the body and yet regard the body being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, that while in the world we overcome the grief that arises from the body's cravings, our craving for comfort, physical comfort, our craving for money, social status, whatever physical attachments bring us, to be strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful in the keynote of love, the impersonal love, that we may overcome that grief. And then under the keynote of resurrection, while we're subject to sensations, those astral emanations, that we continue so to regard those sensations with a strenuousness, with a will, thoughtfully and mindfully while we're in the world, that we can overcome the grief that arises from those sensations, the anguish that we can feel in relation to the problems in the world, the pain and suffering in the world. Under this keynote of resurrection, as the Christ sounds this last sermon of the Buddha, the Lord of light, the Lord of wisdom, that we overcome those sensations and gain control of the astral body. And under the keynote of contact, may we think, reason, feel, and let us so regard our thoughts, those thought forms we create, being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, that while in the world we overcome the grief which arises from the cravings due to these ideas, due to our reasonings, due to our feeling thinking. And may we contact the higher energies, may we contact hierarchical impressions that allow us to merge and blend a purified physical vehicle, a quiescent astral vehicle, and a wise mental vehicle, so that we can be lamps unto ourselves, holding fast to the truth of the lamp. Seek salvation in the truth alone. And be anxious to learn. For in sounding this last sermon of the Buddha, the Christ emphasizes to us to be earnest, to be steadfast, to keep watch over our own hearts, and hold fast to the truth and law, that we cross this sea of life and make an end of grief. That we dispel the darkness of ignorance. That all existences, all the kingdoms be seen for the light in the kingdom without the substance that clothes it. And may peace ensue. And there be cure of all sickness at last. For whether we are stationary or movable, we are bound for this body to perish in the end and to be abstracted into the higher mind, the soul vehicle. So we must be vigilant as we prepare to listen to the great invocation being sounded over and over and over again on the day of invocation and the point of the Gemini full moon, where Christ sounds to bring us in relation to the cosmic Christ. we're going to close the recording at this point in time and take a break for those of you who would like to continue on with a deeper process. So this is the close of part 1, the 4th essential relation, using a nation as an example. And in the next part, we'll deepen our understanding of DK's teachings, particularly the relation between the 3 bodies and the integrated personality as the soul emerges in the conscious awareness of the nation or group. Linking the idea of soul control to the stages of personality development, and will include those who are thinking of a nation and their comments. I want to note that there is a creative lab that was developed through 2025 initiative called the Awakening the Souls of Our Nations, and there are several groups around the globe using this process who have been meditating together, working together, actually some of them for years. I wanted to note that, and you can find that on 2025 Initiative's particular website with the description. And also to note that the Moria Federation has been engaged in an Esoteric United Nations process using meditation and triangle work for several years. And those of you who have been part of that can help steer people to the right places to find those particular sharings. So we'll close the recording for now, and thank you all for your patience and time today. And we'll take a break and come back.